Okay, thank you and welcome. I'll call the meeting to order for our January 23rd Finance Committee meeting. Full committee other than David, who we knew had a conflict. So first up is Fire Department. Thank you for joining us tonight, Chief.
Thank you for having us.
And you're the bulk of our meeting tonight, so we'll look forward to spending time talking about your budget requests. Do you want to, does anyone have any questions off the top, or do you want to just start in maybe with an overview from the chief? Kind of the...
Overview.
Overview sounds good.
Overview.
All right. If you would, please.
So August of 2019, we had all our vehicles inspected by the state. During the inspection, the inspector found the right side frame of the engine 4 with extreme rust, corrosion, and frame separation. There is also body separation due to the weakened frame. The inspector informed us that he will not be inspecting it this year unless it is fixed. And that estimated cost to get it fixed was anywheres, it started at about 100 going up to whatever it costs to finish it, which could be over 200,000.
If I may, this is a pumper or
A pumper.
Pumper.
1999 KME.
1999.
And that particular truck, everything is attached to the frame. So as you start disassembling it to fix the frame, you're probably gonna have to do brake lines, electric, everything.
How many pumpers do we have?
2,
This and one other, which is how old?
2016.
Okay. Thank you.
Engine 4 will be 21 years old. So instead of putting that amount of money into engine 4, we figured it would be better to put the money into new than old.
Per NFPA also, at 25 years, it would have to come out of service.
As a frontline piece, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
20 years old, could only go another 5 anyway.
yeah,
Seems crazy to be...
yeah. Well, by the time it got
spending
fixed,
tons
it
of
would be
money.
4.
Right, right.
Other than that, the truck is gonna be, if come August of this year, it's gonna be taken out of service due to safety reasons. The guys won't be able to drive it, and we'll be down to 1 pump and 1 ladder, and we'll be forced to come off of mutual aid. We'll be forced to rethink how we fight fires.
Can you elaborate on the mutual aid a little bit in terms of how that would work?
Go back to one step. Per NFPA also, standard response within town is supposed to be 2 engines and 1 ladder.
Mutual aids, whenever we get a working fire, we usually always call for a RIT team and another pump to the scene, or ladder, whatever is requested.
Oh, what team?
RIT, Rapid Intervention Team. They stand by in case a crew inside gets in trouble. They are ready to go to get that crew out. Mutual aid is extremely important to us. And even if we don't have a second pump, they're not there to supplement our engine. So eventually, one other community did this a while back, and they stopped coming. And when you stop coming, then you start fighting your fires from the outside. You don't go in because you have no protection. So there's so many moving parts to it. You know, for a second pump, that is also your second water supply. I mean, that pump is laying a line to the first pump at the fire. The first pump is pulling hand lines into the building. That second pump comes in with a hydrant supply line. They are also putting hand lines in to protect the first pump. So if anything happens to that pump, they can still back up with that one. And the whole time you're feeding the first engine that was using tank water. So while you're feeding them, they are replenishing their tank water in case something happens to the hydrant. So you can still back people out of the building, get them out safely.
How's that done today let me just clarify, both your trucks today are 1 or 2 pumps?
2 pumps.
So one truck has 2 pumps and the other,
We have engine 3, which is a pump, engine 4, which is a pump.
okay,
So the first pump pulls up.
Yep.
And basically the size up crew, the first crew to go in, start pulling lines, because you know you got a second engine coming. That second engine's grabbing the hydrant, bringing the 5-inch line up to the first engine, connecting that, giving them a water supply, because when they first get there, they're just running off of tank water, which can last 30 to 45 seconds. So once that water's gone, they have nothing, so you're pulling up, connecting the hydrant with the second engine. So they're refilling their tank, charging the lines from the hydrant line at that point, and all the lines that are going in the building are pressurized through the engine. The second engine that pulls up after it drops its 5-inch line, they're connecting off of the first pump, getting water supply established also to the second pump with backup hand lines ready to go in case the first pump fails. So there's always redundancy to get the guys out of the building.
Thank you.
I think the answer to this question is yes, but I just want to confirm. So there are enough fire hydrants all over Wenham that you can reach every residence
Yes.
from this 2-pump?
Technically, for insurance questions, we're within pretty close to 1,000 feet of most
Yes.
dwellings.
Which
Yes.
the 2 pumps and your lines can accommodate
Yes.
accessing the fire hydrants?
Yes.
And getting to residences or other structures?
For the most part, yes. We carry what's called the 5-inch line. Our first engine carries over 1,500 feet alone. The second engine comes in with 1,000 feet. So as long as you're within 2,500 feet of a hydrant, you're in pretty good shape.
Okay. Right.
And during mutual aid, if you want, you call in other pumps to lay additional lines.
And then, so say you're laying out the maximum length that you have, in terms of charging the lines with pressure, is that harder to do when the line is a lot longer? It's just a non-issue?
You put a pump in line, you put a Z valve in, it's almost like a portable hydrant. And you continually,
Okay.
every 1,000 feet, you put a pump in.
To answer your question, yes, otherwise you would lose pressure.
Yes.
And so you can pump from the hydrant, you can pump anywhere in line where you put the Z valve, and you would have to do that for a long way like that.
So technically, could you use, I'm not saying I'm for or against anything at this point, but I'm just trying to understand how this works. So I get the mutual aid piece in terms of providing a hose to put out a fire. Could you just use a longer line with one pump and you have these other pumps you put at 1,000 feet? Or you need both pumps
There's
to
no
get the right?
redundancy then.
Yeah.
So the guys that are in the,
Redundancy, okay.
the guys that are in the building, if that first pump does go down for any reason whatsoever,
Yeah.
now they're in the building, you don't have any pressure to their lines, and they're not gonna be able to back out safely.
The simple way to think of it is think of that first pump as the attack. That's going in to attack the fire, and consider the second pump the water supply. So the first pump is rolling up. If we're lucky with 3 people on board, one has to run the truck, that leaves 2 people to go ahead and start to work the fire. So if that second pump's not coming in, you're not getting that water supply. And so you can say, sure, you could get a mutual aid pump, but that's coming from, say, Beverly or Hamilton or Topsfield, and it's not gonna be soon enough. So then you either make the choice, the first crew says, okay, we're not gonna start size up and attacking the fire, let's worry about the water supply. You know, that's why there's 2. One's supposed to have,
Redundancy, got it.
right, the first few minutes are super important to get the initial attack and the water supply established. And then from there, it's mostly a manpower issue.
Could we shift the discussion a little bit to the projected cost of engine 4? So it looks like it's gonna cost us $570,000 over 10 years.
Yes, if they did the,
Now, is that an estimate? How many estimates did we get?
The truck prices,
It's a multiple.
yeah,
So how many estimates did we get? And is there interest on that on an annualized basis that we've negotiated? Is there, can we buy, let me just throw it out here, a used pumper truck that would satisfy us for the next maybe 5 to 8 years, for example? For $350, I'm making these numbers up.
Yeah, like we do with the ambulance.
first on the used one, our building limits us.
Excuse me?
our building limits to what we can back into our building. We only have 10-foot
Yeah.
doors.
Yeah,
So any of the trucks that we do have in there, they are all specialty built at 9.5 feet to be able to back into the doors. Otherwise, you're not gonna get them in there, and because of the size of our garage, the length, they all are basically a custom length also. Because the trucks today that are used are being built just as floor models say, they won't even come close to backing in our building. There's most stations, when you just go out and buy off-the-floor truck, they're basically built because they have 12, 14-foot doors, and width is basically unlimited also.
So did, engines used to be smaller?
They've grown over the years. You know, a lot of them, if you look at some of them now, you look at the front of them, there's 3 windshield wipers across the front of them, where there always used to be
Yeah.
2. You go back to like the 86 Mac that we used to have, and that was a lot narrower.
Yeah.
But all of our trucks are about 101 inches wide now, and they're in the 24-foot range to fit in our building properly.
Remember 30 years ago, you know, there might have been triple the manpower. So you had all the hands you need, you didn't need to carry all the equipment, you could spread it over multiple trucks, and now you have 2 or 3 guys on a piece of equipment, so literally it's a catch-all. You have to put everything on this truck, and so the trucks have certainly gotten bigger, wider, taller, carry more water, et cetera.
so back to the 570.
Yeah.
Is that, have we gone out to the market? Is there other trucks that are less expensive or
We-
can perform the same?
We have, and they've,
And
this
where
was,
are we, where's this 570 compare with the market?
The
if you
truck
will?
price itself is actually $475. The 560, 565, 570 is the $475 on 10-year lease
Lease.
payments.
Lease payments.
The interest?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So it's, what, I'm sorry, 4?
475.
Plus another 100. $10,000
And honestly, for the quality of the trucks and the trucks that are being built out there, it's a very conservative price on
Yeah.
trucks, honestly, for the quality. We've already had 2 Sutphens, they've lasted and they've been unbelievable. I mean, the quality in the truck, it's not the Cadillac, it's not the Kia, so to say, but
Hey, I got a Kia.
it's
They're the best value.
It's mid-grade, it's the best value.
Notice you don't bring it to fires.
It's gonna be the longest value for the town. It's got a stainless steel body on it, so it's not gonna rot out like the other 2. You know, and training-wise, it's gonna be the same as our other engine, so it's gonna be very familiar to all the members of the department, ease of use,
Yeah,
Is
we
there
did-
equipment on that truck that can be transferred? And does that
Oh,
truck-
yes, everything.
everything.
Does that truck have any salvage value or,
They're
I say
looking,
trade-in value, but
they're looking at that for us right now,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah,
To see whether it's gonna be more of a scrap value, or it will go possibly to a third-world country or something.
and we have talked to other dealers, and they couldn't even come close to the 475.
and who do we buy this from? What company do we buy?
This would be
Sutphen.
Sutphen, yeah.
Suffolk?
Sutphen. Sutphen, S-U-T-P-H-E-N.
Suffolk.
Sutphen.
Is that out of New Hampshire? Is that the one out of New Hampshire?
No, their closest dealer is out of Connecticut. They're built in Pennsylvania and Ohio.
I do think it's a good question, Jim, about just knowing what the market is out there. I mean, it sounds like it's really limited based on, I mean, you don't see these things for sale, right, around the
Yeah.
corner anyway, even if they're all of the same size and capability, right, or overall dimensions.
And if they are
whatnot.
used, there's a reason why they're being sold.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It is, I think, helpful to just have an understanding of like what, you know, not scouring and, you know, going on a 4-day road trip looking for these things and for sale in Illinois, but just like, you know, if there's a network of, if there is a dealer network, it sounds like the type of thing that'd be brokered, kind of, right? Like,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
big old boat, so yeah, if you have, something that kind of helps to demonstrate that there's nothing really out there that, it feels like you're all sufficiently convinced there's nothing else worth exploring other than a new,
We looked at
Bumper.
one used one today, and I was just
you
looking
did?
at it, and the height
Yeah.
on it alone was almost 12 feet. And that's an enormous truck
Yeah.
being used.
Yeah.
And that was a 2001. So
Right.
you're not
Not
gaining a
not
whole
brand new.
lot.
Right, some of them 10, 12 years old, $250,000.
We have looked into the used options, so.
Yeah.
Alex, for you, just for,
Look, we get trade magazines all the time.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of stuff out there, but again, where you're buying it from, the size of the truck, our limitations,
Yeah.
things like that, and then you buying somebody else's problem. That's a lot of money to put forward for a used vehicle, if it could be a couple payments towards a new one, honestly.
Yeah.
Jeff, can I clarify too, that when we looked at the leasing options for this engine, that's actually in your fire tab from the Super Saturday budget presentation, including the 5, the 10, and the 15-year lease options that show
Yeah.
the interest and the total costs. So that is in your fire tab from the Super Saturday.
Okay. We've got the whole thing, but the 560 is all in FY '21. But if we did this, we would structure it as a lease.
Yeah, so you did get a new one of those in a January meeting, but I can get you
Okay.
another. But if you go with this one that was handed out tonight, the full capital wrap-up, Alex, that I handed out tonight, this one,
Yep, okay.
it has the corrected 570.
Thank you. So is it, and I do have the backup that you provided, Jack. You just got to get rid of the old one. It had some
Yeah, no,
notes on it
that's
as
what I
well.
wanted to clarify.
76,269? Is that the,
That's the last payment for engine 3.
oh,
Yeah.
sorry, yeah, that's the one, that's the 16, right?
Yes.
The
Yeah, so
2016
It's
bumper.
the fourth line of fire in this updated capital plan tonight, and it shows the 57,000. Yeah, so Carrie's got it, that's the one.
Yep.
I trust you. I just,
10-year lease.
thank you. You're one of 10.
You asked, or I'm just reading your sheet, sir.
Yep.
If you went to one pump versus two, you said the insurance would go up
And possibly a 16% increase.
16? From what?
And that,
to
and
what?
that could be I don't know if, Anthony, if you wanna make a call to the ISO, see if they can
I was just
figure out the
looking,
exact number, how it would affect our insurance premiums.
we can try.
Yeah. Try and nail down a number.
but you gave a percentage of 16%.
About 16%
It's
just
what we're
figuring.
figuring.
Increase.
'Cause
When's the
you're
next
losing-
time they're due out?
You're losing a whole engine company.
It's coming close.
Because we
Probably
probably
another-
would, we probably would maintain the current ISO rating until
Yes.
they come out, and then
Yes.
if we didn't have it, then we would
Yeah,
get knocked
yes.
down a peg, and then that's when it would start affecting the insurance rates.
Our last ISO rating was in 2016.
Is it every 5 years?
2018, wasn't
They'll be doing a phone call,
It's my
then they're
first
gonna do stats halfway through it now, and
Yeah.
then they'll do the full one at 5 years.
Okay.
Thank you.
it? 2018.
This would be theoretically.
Yeah, I'm curious about the comparison.
Sure.
Could you explain to me the thought behind, I know we lease a lot, the difference between doing a 10-year lease, and you have an extra 100,000 in interest, versus issuing debt to get the whole thing up front, and then what that would mean in terms of total cost when all's said and done?
Chris, do you want to handle that, or do you want me to give the quick one, and then you can go into detail?
Yeah.
So there is a cost to borrowing money, and anything under $1 million becomes, it's really, I don't want to say not recommended, yeah, it's not really not recommended, because you still have to go through bond counsel and all that expense. So we certainly could do a cost benefit on both plans, but it's expensive to go out and just borrow anything under the $1 million.
In terms of total debt issue, that's, I do remember $1 million roughly, but you could borrow for multiple reasons theoretically, right? If we had other,
If we had
other capital to reach that level, yeah, to make it.
Right, as long as those capital items you're borrowing have a useful life greater than 10
10
years.
years,
We
yeah.
certainly don't want to, include a police cruiser with
No,
that, and
no.
then we don't own it
Right,
anymore.
right,
That
I
would
just-
be,
Right, I didn't know if there was some structural matter related to the issuance of the municipal debt that would make it on a per-project
Yeah.
basis, that it had to be separate.
we even talked about banning it, and banning's really a lot of work for staff every year. So, Jackie can speak to that.
And you're
more,
still
too.
gonna get interest.
Right.
It may not, so you.
It's a variable rate too, right?
Yeah, so you could, you could come in and have, a low rate this year on the first year of the ban at, like 3%, and then, you go out to renew it for your second year, it could go up, to 8%.
We'll pay 100,000 in
You
interest.
could, you're still probably gonna end up
You
paying
could,
100,000 with the ban.
There's no fixed rate ban interest rates?
No, because it's a year-by-year thing, and this is a new thing, why bans are now coming up with the Modernization Act that passed in, the Municipal Modernization Act that passed in 16, they made it that you can go out, it used to be bans were only 3 years, then this expanded out to 10 years, so that's why it was, we've never looked at it before, it's just, this has really just been a new option that has started for, municipalities starting in 16 with the banning that long. But, so that's why we ended up doing it for the iron rail in 2018,
Yeah, the
because
roof?
we did, that was part of the project, yes. They did the paving, the roof,
Signage.
so it was 245,000, and the bond council told us, it's not worth, because initially we were like, we want a bond, we want to go for debt, and they're like, it's not worth it, you
The
just do
fire
it.
truck?
This is for the iron rail.
Iron rail.
Oh.
And they told us, so we asked her what, that's where we got that $1 million from. They really said it's not really worth going out for debt unless you get over that $1 million threshold.
I think, I remember Patty saying it was just to get bond counsel to do it, it was like $20,000
Yeah.
before you even start paying interest. So there's that expense to go out, and that's why they say it's really not worth it under the $100,000.
Can I add one other item? to
Yeah.
it? So I want to clarify that in the capital plan that's in front of you, the one that's the 11x17s that we've been updating regularly,
Yeah.
all of the funding scenarios that are presented, obviously are staff recommendations at this point. They're not reflective of any selectmen or
Yeah.
FinCom decisions. But where things are in the funding scenarios, like I sat down with Jeff, we looked at all the different leasing options. There's not a lot in our capital plan right now that is, enough to get to a long-term debt situation. I think we were very lucky when we bought the 2016 pumper, because if you remember, that $76,000 is part of a much bigger debt issuance that had occurred
Yeah.
at the time. But right now, based on the nature and lifespan of these projects, there's not enough long-term projects to get us to $1 million for debt, which is why we hadn't proposed it as a funding scenario for the current slate of projects for fiscal '21.
There's the obvious, if we only do a 5-year lease, obviously we're gonna cut down on that rate, but that means our payment is up, so.
Yep.
This was kind of what we thought could be affordable or sustainable for the next 10 years. Might not be the most ideal, but
And after 10 years, we own it.
we own
We
it.
own it.
And after 10 years, the projected life of that piece of equipment is another
15 more.
15 more.
Yeah.
But, and usually it goes out, what do you do for rehab after 12 years, 13 years, somewhere around there, midpoint? Do you send it for rehab?
In the 12-year area.
Yeah, so, 2 years after we just get done paying for it, I'm sure they're gonna come back and say, we need about $150,000, guessing.
Overhaul
for-
pumps
For
and everything.
rehab.
Yeah.
They're basically stripping that down to bare metal and rebuilding it and fixing any rot, not rot, but maybe some rust that might be forming, and the engine work too, so.
Right.
But yeah, we should get,
I mean, for the quality of the truck, the 2006 Sutphen that we have, we've kept it up with the dealer. We've only had 2 problems in the $8,000 area. As long as we've kept the warranty, all the warranty maintenance up with the dealer,
Yep.
the trucks have been impeccable, honestly. It's been a very quality product for the town.
So we own other, who makes this pumper?
Sutphen.
Sutphen.
Sutphen?
Our ladder's a
Okay.
Sutphen, which
Okay.
was bought for 2006, which
Yeah.
basically is the same cab as our 2016.
So we've been working with them,
Yes.
yeah, for a while. Okay. In 16, when we bought the pumper that we have now, the newer, did we have just the one, the older one, the 99 only, or did it?
We traded in 85, 86 area.
Okay.
81. Yeah.
At that time?
Yes.
So we basically, when have we not had 2 pumpers?
We've never,
We always have.
Yeah, always have.
Okay. Okay. I should have asked that earlier.
Now it works.
All right. Any other questions on the capital request for the pumper, Mike?
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, I know you already explained it, but takes a while for me, sorry. What was, you're asking for a truck with 2 pumps, and we have a truck today with,
No,
One pump.
it's one pump.
oh, got it,
A second pumper truck.
got it. I got it, I got my question, I got it figured out now. Thank you. Thank you. So what you have is 2 trucks, each with 1 pump, 2 pumper.
Yes.
Got it, sorry.
I love learning how this stuff works, and it's cool to hear about the redundancies, that second one to arrive feeds in. So it sounds like you just you shut that pump down on the first one that gets
Well, even the second truck is carrying
its own water.
your SCBA's,
Yeah, and all that.
ground ladders, thermal images. It's carrying everything we need to
Right.
fight that fire, so.
But that you only have less than a minute worth of water, a minute's
Yes,
worth of water on the
basically.
first truck is interesting.
Yeah.
It's a 1,500 gallon minute pump. You have 750 gallons of water on that particular truck, so 30 seconds, if
Yeah.
you're at full bore, that's gone.
How many fires do we have in town that requires 2 pumps?
104.
All of them.
Every fire alarm, we send 2 pumps and a ladder, because we don't know it's a false alarm until we get
Right.
there. Yeah.
What kind, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How many are,
Well, probably 3, 4.
2 or 3 or 4? Yeah.
Yeah.
What constitutes mutual aid? I.e., is it,
Anything manpower, equipment-wise, anything. I mean,
Rehab,
you go
yeah.
back to March when we had the huge brush fire.
Okay.
All of our equipment was out, and we probably had an additional 12 trucks in this town.
The gas fire.
Yeah.
and they
Got
come
2
from
bonfires.
Hamilton or Beverly or
Wherever.
wherever you
Yeah.
call it?
Yeah.
There's a pre-designated system for Essex County, but it doesn't, you know, that
Oh,
we
so
kind
it
of have
depends, it's the
have an idea
escalation.
of what's gonna be coming when and when you need it, but you can go well out of it. I mean, we're up in Andover, which is not in our,
Yep.
when they had the gas problem, we're up there with a pump and with our
Hmm.
brush truck and our air unit, you know, and that's not normal. And when we had all of that brush fire, we had people, I don't know what the farthest town away was, but
How is that dispatch managed as to who's responding?
Man, it's called the 10-alarm running card, and each alarm basically brings in 4 more cities and towns. So not only did we have 12 trucks out there fighting, say, the brush fire, we had an engine and a ladder still here to protect the rest of the town, because it's still daily
Yeah.
business.
You always backfill your station.
So you gain a lot through mutual aid.
Yeah.
So when you go into like a third alarm, you got 9 departments coming, so you got probably 2 trucks at the station and the balance at the fire or the scene. You know, so that's kinda how that works.
Right.
It's a great system.
Yes.
It really is.
and with, honestly, over the last 25 years, there's been such slashes to manpower, you know, nationwide,
Right.
that you're more dependent on it than ever. And we probably give it more than we get it, but when we get it, we really, really need it.
Yeah.
Because we're a call department, if it's a daytime call, you get 3 guys in town, and that's sometimes it.
Right.
Is there reimbursement for those services, or do we pay into an
It's
Essex
just-
County pool
Just
of
the
money?
pool, it's the pool, there is no monetary, it's the pool of, we help you, you help us.
Yeah.
So there's not like a fee
Nope.
to
No.
It's
participate?
all like a handshake, basically.
Yeah, right.
It's a
Can I raise
mutual-
an issue that will be raised? And I'm not advocating for it one way or the other, but I suspect it will be raised at
Oh,
some
here
point
it comes.
prior to town meeting or on town meeting floor. And that's the issue of sharing equipment with our neighbors.
We just did that study last year.
Okay, so let's have it just, bring us up to date on that study, because I think we should be exercised ourselves in what it says and what are the advantages or disadvantages.
Or if you think about it, like renting, like, me and you have 1 car, we have 2 sets of keys. I gotta go at 8 o'clock in the morning, you gotta go at 8:15. Who's gonna take the car?
That argument's always there that, oh, you won't have an incident at the same time they do. Well, you will.
So,
And then we
Happens all the time.
Basically demand.
so it's
the
a
demand.
matter of unknowing
Yeah.
Unknown.
when you're gonna need a piece of equipment, and it could be tied up
And
in another community, or,
You're gonna-
Hamilton,
the
it
other-
wouldn't be
You're
available.
gonna
to
train
us
on it twice as much, drive it twice as much, and you're gonna replace it twice as much.
that gets into who's gonna insure it, who is really gonna
Oh, I'm
drive it.
I'm
Oh,
sure
yeah.
there's a lot of,
Yeah.
business, and
Oh, yes.
insurance
And then-
complications, but I think it's something,
One of the other real important things, like we just talked about mutual aid,
yeah,
instead of having 2 trucks that could be at a scene because of mutual aid, now you have 1.
Yeah.
So you're limiting yourself there also.
Does a preponderance of your mutual aid come from Hamilton?
No.
Where does it come from?
It's all distributed equally. Hamilton could be an engine company or a RIC team. We could be asking for a ladder right away because maybe we do have both our pumps there right away and we need a ladder.
Yeah.
Depends on the scene, depends on the location, depends on what's involved with the whole scene, honestly.
Generally, if you think of it as, your border towns are usually your first, that's usually
Yeah.
how it goes, so Topsfield, Hamilton, Essex, Beverly, Danvers, and then, the rings go out from there.
Yeah.
It obviously makes sense that your closest aid is what we would tap on.
Is there a rule of thumb in terms of how many pumpers and ladders you have based on population?
The general rule of thumb is, which we already gave the NFPA ruling, or standard, is 2 pumps and a ladder to start every scene.
So I get that, but so
with-
say you have a population of 5,000 people, you have 2 pumps and a ladder, and then you have a population of 16,000 people, like if we
Yeah,
merge with
and
Hamilton.
it does go up. We actually had a chart, but
Yeah.
it went way up with different municipalities and sizes and population.
So there's, at some point, there's a
The
threshold.
minimum standard is 2 pumps and a ladder.
Yeah, right, that would be your
Right,
response
but per
threshold.
population is what I'm asking.
I don't think it's per population, it's just,
That's my question, is that a criteria?
well, it is per population, but it's like the city of Portland will have 4 engines, 2 ladders, an ambulance, a squad, a deputy, or the chief responding at all times. For the city of the town of Wenham
The
will be.
reason why I'm asking that, so say we did do shared services, and if there is a criterion like that, you'd end up in the same place anyway.
Yeah.
With 4 pumps and 2 ladders, or, do you see what I'm saying, why I'm asking that question? Even if you did shared, you'd end up in the same place
Right,
with
if
the
you
same
take
amount
the
of equipment.
population. The biggest thing we found with that study, Jim, was, somebody's gonna be the host community, and it's not gonna be us with our tiny little building. So the pump would be in the next town over. So, basically, it'd be like if we were sharing a snow blower, and I just say, oh, by the way, this is what we're buying, give me my half, and then, oh, by the way, here's a $500 repair bill, give me my half, and, it's just they would be in control of it, and you really, housing it, equipping it, different equipment from us, the mutual aid issue, the fact that it's, past our station to go get it, to come back over to town, doesn't, logistically doesn't make any sense. And, they would be basically paying for it and then assessing us, and then,
An IMA.
5 years from now, oh, by the way, it needs this, this, and this, we want, this new equipment on it, and since it's half your truck, even though it's not your SCBA bottles, for example, but you owe us half for that, it didn't make any sense
Like you
logistically.
just said, on the SCBA bottles, they're different than ours.
Yeah.
So who's he gonna have on the truck?
Yeah. Is there a response time issue? I mean, it sounds like it.
Well, there would be, sure.
Yeah.
Is that part of the report, like we would have
And
a
there is a
30%
standard.
increase in response time or something?
We have a good response time.
But so,
There
if
was
someone
something in
says,
the
why aren't we
report.
doing
Yeah.
a share?
Yeah, I can find that report and give you each a copy of it.
I think to Jim's point, it's good to at least be,
Yeah,
I was just
up to
asked
speed
last
on
night,
kind of those.
actually.
well, just to read up on it,
Yep.
I think read up on it, and the community did a study about 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Am I right with that?
On the,
There's been-
on the,
No,
A shared
total
product.
combined.
The broader,
It was 2009.
Was that, when was it?
2009.
2009, or 10
More
10
than
years
one.
ago. 11
The
years
fire
ago.
study.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
fire
there's
study.
there's been many of them,
The
yeah.
highlights of that were somewhat revealing in that it really didn't show any substantial savings, and, because you'd have to do another firehouse someplace, if I remember correctly, out on the east end of Hamilton or Wenham.
What are we
Yep.
gonna do?
And it didn't reduce personnel, and it didn't reduce equipment.
If I recall, it actually increased
Yes, it
personnel
did.
and
It
increased
did
capital
increase
for
personnel.
for the building.
So why I'm raising this, obviously, is I think we need to be aware of the different issues that will come before finance, the town, and the meetings that are between now and town meeting.
Absolutely.
Hamilton FinCom has asked about this a few years ago. Did they just buy a machine recently? So they bought a
Yes.
pumper.
Yes.
They bought a pumper last year, they bought the ladder the year before, and a pumper the year before that.
Okay,
Wow.
yeah, so they've got,
Yeah.
Their
Big-
pump, their standard pump that they bought, which they could buy a floor model, they were close to 600,000, 560.
mhm.
And the ladder was almost $1 million.
Yes.
The ladder was $1.1 million.
Our ladder was 500,000 and our pump was 400,000.
Yeah.
So the study that you mentioned in response to Jim's question was more recent and focused not on combining firehouses, but
Shared apparatus.
Shared apparatus.
specifically, yeah, capital, shared apparatus, and pumper in particular, or pumper and other combinations
It
of
was-
things
it was a
maybe?
pump.
Pump in
It was a
particular.
pumper.
Specific to a pumper.
It was actually right before we did, excuse me, right before we got engine 3, we had just done it. It was
Yeah.
right in that area, because our ISO rating was coming out then.
Mhm.
And that's helpful, because I was just asked last night about sharing
Yeah.
services.
So I think it's gonna come up.
Yeah, it's a reasonable question. Lots of reasons why it's less than ideal. The logistical challenges that you mentioned, any service level impact, like response time impact, where it's a public safety matter, would need to be considered. So if that went down, or if manpower, if personnel, needs increased, it seems like the only benefit would be, presumably, cost savings would be the drive, the motivation to at least consider these things.
You gotta remember too, a lot of times when, say, just a thunderstorm comes through, it's coming through their town too at the same time, and their trucks are out.
Likelihood of something happening in both towns. Oh, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, when all the trees come down, the
Yeah.
wires come down.
Right, wind, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Who's gonna wait for the service?
Right, right.
And I already know who's gonna wait. It's not in our building.
Right, those who own the truck,
Yeah.
the truck in the building get use of it.
So I forwarded you an email, just so you can see how the line cards work for Essex County, so they're part of District 5. So it'll tell you, like, in the event that we have a one-alarm fire here, all 3 pieces are going out, and then they'll backfill our station with the Hamilton engine and a Topsfield engine that comes. So that becomes mutual aid too, and just manning the town to make sure that if there was another
home base.
incident. Yeah, so just like they have responsibility for Beverly and other surrounding towns. So it's interesting, so you can take a peek at
And
that.
we do the same presumably with Hamilton. If they get called in
Exactly.
on their tier, we back them up.
Right.
Do they physically come here, or is it their, oh, they
Physically
do?
come and
Physical park
They'll
on the
back,
station.
oh,
Then they park on the apron because they can't.
Wait, they can't get in, so.
yeah.
But it's
A lot of the
interesting to
pumps do.
follow, so I think that, take a peek at that.
Yeah.
I think my last question is just, are there any other towns on the North Shore in Essex County that only have one pumper?
No.
Some actually have not just 2 frontline pieces, but they'll keep a reserve truck, just to have it.
Okay.
Because even when, you gotta remember, if we still only had 1 pump and 1 ladder, and one goes out for service, you're only leaving 1 vehicle
Yeah.
for the whole town at that point,
Yeah.
even just looking at it from a service standpoint.
Yeah, we just, facility-wise, we can't have a reserve piece.
Yeah.
There's just no room.
The cost, the payments rolling off on the other engine 4,
The last one this
The
year.
last one.
engine 3.
Engine 3.
engine 3, sorry. That's right, engine 4 is the one that's in disrepair.
Yes.
It's all rotted out, right?
Yep.
Engine 3 and that, so would be close to capital expense neutral year to year if it was another year later, right? So we've got, this is getting pulled off the road in August, you said, right, at the start of the fiscal year, right? They won't inspect it. That comment was interesting, that the inspector, or whoever it is, said, I won't be inspecting it next, like, It's interesting that you would ever say, I'll let it pass now, but without seeing the future condition a year from now, I won't inspect it. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
It's almost like they shouldn't have passed it this year.
Well,
Correct.
you are correct.
My car.
Right. So,
There's enough integrity in it right now, but by the time that year passes with the salt and everything, it
Yeah.
won't be. It's separating at a rapid rate.
yeah,
Basically, the two frames, it's a frame within a frame, and you can stick your whole thumb in between
Yeah.
the two of them now.
And of course, now that we know about that, that only goes out if we really, really, really need it.
right.
Yeah.
It
You know,
doesn't
we
fall
are
apart.
trying
yeah.
not to,
Yeah.
because it's a safety concern.
Right.
Can I ask a question? Not that want this to happen, but if we did defer it for a year, would the Essex County group allow us to go a year without being part of giving mutual aid for that one piece? Knowing that maybe the following year, because the debt's rolling off, that we could just incur it. It's a one-year thing. I don't know if it's something that we could write a letter, just if it was necessary.
I think it's a great question, but the only problem is, to stay on mutual aid with something, if we send one truck out, we're leaving the town with only one truck, and I would never
Yeah.
feel comfortable
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah, I know. It's obviously less than ideal, and fortunately, the Quint can act as one or the other, not both at the
Yeah.
same time, but
I mean, just
it's less than ideal for certain, but
Yeah.
given the financial,
Well, and I had wondered that, but the redundancy argument convinced me to not even ask. Because I was wondering if we could delay a year and then find other capital and then get to $1 million and finance it. But since August is the deadline,
Yeah.
and then we would lose redundancy, it's a safety issue.
Yes.
And remember, from the time you order a truck, it's probably almost a full year.
Right.
Until you get a truck.
Oh, it takes a year if
To
you ordered
build.
it today,
Upwards of,
it'd take 10 to 12 months.
about
to-
nine months
Yeah.
minimum.
to build it, yep.
And again, that 475 price, that's 2019 pricing. There has been a price increase because we worked with this dealer in the past. They're holding that price
Yes.
for us till town meeting time to
Yeah.
feel out where we're gonna go with it.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
So there will be a time, actually, where we're not part of mutual aid because of the timing.
Yes.
You know, obviously, if this was something that went to town meeting and passed, we could start the process going. So you kind of get the clock ticking a little bit, but still, there would be some months where
Yeah.
we're not part of mutual aid.
But, and what about, so you're not part of mutual aid, but also, then will we go down to one pump if this doesn't pass inspection, or can you use it, do I dare ask? Can you use it?
It's not gonna pass inspection. He already
So
said
we will
that.
be with one pump inevitably for some period of time.
Yeah, we could.
While we're waiting for delivery of the new.
If it didn't pass
Assuming
inspection,
we purchase it.
we couldn't use it. It would just, liability would
Right.
be tremendous for the town. Maya wouldn't even cover us knowing that.
Well, we put our own firefighters at risk as well.
Right. Yeah,
Potentially.
exactly.
I mean, you know,
Yes.
the thing could,
Yeah,
if you drive it down the road, the frame breaks in half, and you
Frame
run into a
breaks
car,
and-
I mean, it just,
right,
You're-
yeah, it's,
it's not worth the risk.
no.
There is a possibility, this dealer did work with us in the past, there's a possibility he may be able to bring something up for us to use in the
Yeah.
interim.
Oh.
Can't guarantee that,
Yeah.
I'm just, they've been very, very good to work with us, honestly, overall.
Like another
They-
community's trade-in that they will
Something
loan out
possibly,
or
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, we've been working with him, so.
Yeah,
hopefully.
that is again, but you have that restriction with,
Well, in the summer months too, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time we've put a pump out back.
really.
Not ideal, but
What do you mean by that? Out behind the station?
not in the building, just out parked behind the
Yeah.
station.
Out in the
Until
elements.
it gets too cold
Yeah,
out.
that's
Right,
not-
Yeah.
which is fine in the summer, but it's not fine, but it's better in the summer, obviously, you can't do it in the winter.
Mm.
Right, right.
Just to confirm, this is a 10-year lease, a proposed 10-year lease? Is this what you're proposing?
Right now, we put it as a 10-year
10-year
lease,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, that's it.
Mhm.
That's all I have, sir.
Okay. Should we move to other capital items? Unless there's anything else you want to add on the engine four?
No.
Pretty well
If
covered
you
it.
have any questions, you wanna
Yeah.
come
Have
see
what
it?
we need.
or-
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, yeah.
door's always open. You got any other questions, or?
Bring my
Sure.
kids.
Yeah?
They love to climb on fire trucks,
Oh,
right?
yeah, who doesn't?
I know.
Okay, you want to cover protective gears next on the list?
Protective gear is basically, again, it's at the end of its life,
Yeah.
10-year lifespan.
Just we're cycling through these, right?
Yes.
We're on the
These
second,
SCBA? Or no, sorry.
We're on the second cycle of it.
this is just bunker gear.
This is the bunker gear.
Bunker gear.
Pants and jacket. There was a price increase, as we told you before. They've changed the fabrics and things like that, and that's the new cost to finish our department from a 2-year replacement.
We have the washing system,
We
right?
bought that, and that extended the
That
life, so we
extended
can
life.
stay at the 10-year mark now.
Yep.
And it's really working well.
Versus they were getting worn out in how long roughly?
Maybe you were getting 5 years out of them before,
Okay, so
because
extended life, yeah.
everything's just grinding in, breaking the threads and everything else in the gear.
And they're starting to come out with a new material, which is like a corduroy, so the outer layer wears first before the inner layer, which is actually a very good
But
thought.
still, per NFPA, it's
Yeah.
still gonna be, it's a 10-year lifespan on the gear.
Got it. What percentage of this does it replace?
About half the department.
I think I know the answer to this question, but I have to ask. Sorry. So this is a complete replacement every time,
Jacket and pants, correct.
right? So, I'm just making up a number. Why not do it every 3 years? Meaning, you do a third, upgrade a third of your protective gear 1 year, the next year you're doing that, the third year
Carol,
you're
this-
completely.
It's just kind of the way
So you're
that-
stretching it out?
the kind of way that it broke, because we didn't have the washer and dryer prior, and 10 years ago, it was, we had to buy half the department then, the other half, because that's where we just ended up. And again, with new hires and things like that, we budget about 3 sets a year on top of that, so we just would have to start breaking it out a little bit earlier, and like you say, break it out in 3 year. If somebody leaves or something like that, or they outgrow their gear, then that gear gets passed down to, again, a new recruit that's going to the academy, that they destroy the gear, honestly, through the academy class. So we don't give them any new gear until they've been there a couple of years. So we do kind of stagger it a little bit that way. But the way you're saying it, budgetary-wise, it's just something, after this cycle's done, that we can start to look at that to break the cost down a little.
Thank you.
And then SCBA, I see, is,
It's just this, again, the second year of the replacement of the last 4 packs that had to be done.
yep.
And again, those will be on a 10-year cycle also.
So we expect a few years of not having to replace the SCBA?
Yeah.
Thank you. That's, okay.
I have a question about the spreadsheet where it says Board of Select, yes, no, FinCom, yes, no. I thought that there hadn't been like votes on it, but, or deferred. Is this, what is that?
The selectmen had their meeting on Tuesday night, and they made their recommendations on the capital items on Tuesday night. So this is the updated sheet based on their recommendations from Tuesday.
Okay, thank you.
And per my email yesterday evening, we'll be looking to meet with jointly to talk about big picture and some of these items as well, so.
So we're not gonna,
Well, if we're, if,
recommendation tonight.
I don't think that we need to. Frankly, I didn't know we were gonna be having their recommendation that quickly, so that's good. But I don't know that we have to at this stage, I think.
I did tentatively put it on the February 5th
Okay,
meeting for the vote, if you want, give you time to talk about it. And
okay. Yeah, I think it might be helpful to have more departments covered, even if that doesn't, even if we're just doing it on our own, with follow-on questions if we're not hosting
I
our own.
don't see any reason why we.
Okay. Okay, so ambulance. You're one of 4. It's requested 31,000. I scribbled up, I'm sorry.
Alex, if I may?
Yeah, of course.
Can we do scuba before ambulance?
Oh, yeah, sure, by all means, yeah, yep.
Thanks.
SCBA. So that's replacing some at 15,000.
That's 2 more packs.
Just
out of
2.
The last, again, like I
2.
said, the 2-year program that we replaced, and
Yep,
everything's done except for just pressure testing bottles now, which we had that in the budget to start doing.
10-year cycle
Yep,
for these. And that's just 2?
2.
yep, 2
Yeah.
more.
Wow, expensive.
So next year, you start the cycle again and ask for graded scuba and all that?
No, we don't ask for any more packs now. We should be good. Again, we'll come back in 9 years for the 10-year budget, but we won't be here to ask that.
We're good. So
Do you
we're good for a
hydro
couple
Can I
years.
write that down?
SCBA.
Hydro test every
Hydro
year?
test, yes.
Hydro test the bottles, that's it.
Every year?
Yeah,
So
no,
you-
hydro test is
Every
every
5
5
years?
years on the bottles, and the packs get annually serviced.
So you could have bottles after, when you do the hydro test, they get rejected.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Alex.
Sure. Are those custom to the firefighter? Are they specific to, or is it just
The SCBA pack?
Yeah.
No, they're not, they're universal.
universal?
The packs itself, it's the harness and all that, which holds the bottle, the high-low regulator, all
Yep.
that is the pack portion. Each firefighter is issued a mask on
Their
their
own
own.
mask.
Yes.
Of course, yeah, makes sense. Protective gear, critical. Any other questions before we move to ambulance? Okay. All right. Ambulance.
so what do you have for a sheet there?
Couple, I think. I've got a write-up.
Yep, that one?
I saw that. I was reading everything I got.
No, I didn't,
What do you got?
no, I just had the engine.
Or the one with the 10,000
Oh, maybe that was just the
injectors? There's a lot. There's a lot being crossed off the list, so.
You want me to-
Was that your old, the sheet you're talking, was that the old one? The one you provided once before?
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
that was from like Cubby Club. And then they got a memo in January, I believe they were the updated memo.
I got it
Got that
somewhere.
in January.
Just the damn 88,000.
yeah. So it's gonna be just the van for the 88,000, plus the 6,000 for the upfitting.
So the payment that you show on your spreadsheet says $30,000. $30,000 would be a $24,000 lease payment, plus $6,000 just for the first initial upfitting of the year. So
First initial one?
upfitting, lettering, getting radios in and all that, just getting it licensed, all encompassing to get it to be able to be transported.
That's just a one-time cost.
Yes, the 6,000 is,
So the final 3 years would be 24,000.
yes.
Yes.
And that would be an identical to what we have right now that we had got from Kevin Lyons.
And why is there a no from the Board of Select?
They didn't wanna support it. Because on the, if it's a second ambulance, the revenue, they feel the revenue coming in for second transports wouldn't be enough. We're estimating about 40 calls extra a year, 40 to 50 a year, at roughly $1,000 a call.
Where is the memo? Do we have the memo?
Should have
You
had-
got it, it should be in your tab from the prior meeting,
Oh,
Terry.
okay.
So this was the original one, right?
Correct.
100, which is now, you're saying 60,
The truck would be $88,000,
so you went from 100 to 88.
yes. Right, that would be the same as what we have right now, just a 2020 or 21.
Plus the 6,000 for upfitting.
The total cost would be 103, right?
Yes,
With the lease costs and so on.
yes.
94.
That's 22.
Jeff, wouldn't it be, it
Well,
was 88 for the
if you
truck
add-
and then 94.
With the interest.
With the interest.
94 all in, plus 6 lettering, 100,
Did you
call
say-
it, right?
What'd you say,
I
94?
think with the,
Or 88?
with the interest?
With the
What's in there,
interest.
what's in the wrap-up spreadsheet includes the $6,000 first year and the interest in the subsequent years. It's fully loaded in
Oh.
the fiscal 21 spreadsheet in front of you.
Interest.
Yes, for the lease and the interest payment all together, and then the 6,000 in the first year.
Right.
And there's a handout from that as well in your tabs from a prior meeting, if you wanted to see the breakdowns for different leasing options.
Why is all the interest in the first payment?
No,
Sorry.
the interest is in all of the lease payments. The first year has the $6,000 of the accessories as well.
Sorry, I circled, I was looking at the 57, sorry. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
It's a lot of numbers.
So it would be, I guess, the issue is lost revenue, should we have a vehicle out of service, right? Should we have the ambulance out of service? That's the primary, that and,
Patient care
Inability.
usually would be the first.
right, yes, absolutely.
Wait for a mutual aid.
It's like when our ambulance was down on 3 different occasions for 5 weeks, 2 days. And-
3 different times?
Yes.
Yeah.
5 weeks, couple days cumulatively, like all in?
Yes,
So it was down because of the fuel issue?
the fuel issue one, and again, this was the original used one.
Yeah,
that- that
or
we
Middleton
had
or something?
About a week, it was about a week area and that alone that we had the front end rebuilt.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
just because of its age and whatnot.
Yeah, it was short money,
Yeah,
this pilot program is $7,000 or
We
something like
estimated
that.
approximately $49,000 in lost revenue. So if we had the second ambulance, you wouldn't have lost that.
Right, it would just be the incremental for the second, right. Yeah, and you're absolutely right, it's health and safety, it's public safety matter, but in the context of a program that presumably has one operating,
Yeah.
it's the incremental from the
And it's like if
second
we have
calls.
if we have a motor vehicle accident, we can only transport one person. And you lose that revenue on the second or third patient, you know? You have to farm that out to another company.
Have we been in the kind of permanent, not, post-pilot phase of this for the whole current fiscal year? When did we transition
Yes.
over? We did?
March.
March, it was before the, right, okay. It'd be helpful to see, I know that there's a lag time in revenue received from insurance, submitted
some of
requests
it's
and all
catching
that.
up, but we
Once
just,
it
we
did.
just got, we actually just caught up on our May payments of 2019 just recently. So again, that's insurance setting up through electronic collections. It's a lot quicker for the most part on our billable for a month. Usually the electronic collections come in right away, and there's probably half of the monthly billables come in over a month's period.
What percentage of it do we receive that we submit for? How does it work?
Right now, I mean, still, we're catching up, like I said, it was almost 9 months behind what we just caught up from May, so I'd honestly have to figure it out to give you a real definite.
Do we get paid do we submit, is it fixed cost? What do we
For-
submit for? For a ride to, say, Beverly?
No, they're all different. I mean, if it's an ALS intercept, that starts around $2,200. Our base rate for an emergency BLS call starts at $1,000 and it goes up from there.
Okay.
There's mileage added on, there's oxygen added on.
Okay, so there's,
Yeah.
Anything you use. yeah.
there's whatever's
Yeah.
used.
If-
And then I was just thinking for the, because that applied before your program, right? Because you billed for those other services other than the lift to the hospital, right? No, you wouldn't bill for any of that. You received no revenue for it?
Accidents we did.
Yeah, car accidents was our only billable,
Yeah.
not, because everything was going
Got
in
it.
Lion's truck. As soon as
That's right.
patient was put in, it was 100% cost to the town.
Person who
Right.
transports.
Because if you're not providing the transport, you're not getting that other bill,
Yes.
of course, right? So, and are we what percentage of that for which we submit for insurance reimbursement do we receive back? Do we,
We're probably one of the better, we're in the 90% area for collections.
90% collection?
There's a
Great.
different formula for each insurance company as far as preferred providers, things like that. So there's a lot of moving parts, honestly. There's always a new insurance company being added daily or weekly, at least I'm adding something new. And again, the first one you always gotta do on paper. You start your first clean by paper, and then it catches up after that, then you can go to electronic submissions.
Yeah.
We do electronic submissions on every call. It gets billed out, that as long as the company's been set up. If it hasn't been set up, then I get the information back that we have to set up the insurance company. Medicare, Medicaid, they're one of the, bigger ones. You get a little bit less on them. They already have a percentage that's worked out, what they pay per call.
Good, right.
So like the Blue
Negotiated.
Cross Blue Shield, you could be getting a higher collection. This town has a real great insurance network as far as what people have, so we get a lot more back in revenue compared to like, you know, if you wanted to look at a Salem or Lynn or something like that. So we don't really go unpaid for any call, per se.
So the question, if we invested in this second piece of equipment,
It's gonna guarantee you continuity of the revenue to continue to come in.
Yes.
I'm gonna just go to the, I mean, obviously the safety side, service to the community, all that is clear. Would we, by having the second piece, would we come out to the plus of over $24,000 a year of additional revenue, and can we demonstrate that through data and collection?
But-
You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you- the bi-
Yeah,
on the-
what's, it's kind of a, investment return.
on the conservative side, like the chief said, the low conservative side, we'd be bringing in $40,000. So
Per year.
40,000.
So we
per
come
year.
out 16 to the
Yeah.
good,
Yes.
using that kind of calculation.
Yes. And again, that's on the low side. There are other things that could come into play, more mutual aid, things like that.
We
Even
go
on
to
the
other
ambulance.
towns with our ambulances?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
And so we pick up some
We pick up a little bit, yes.
revenue there?
The other thing to consider with that too is with the second ambulance, you know, you could run A1 3 weeks, run A2 every third week, you know, and so that way at the end of 5 or 6
Well, you have
years,
less mileage.
you
Yes.
have less
Yes.
wear and tear, and when that truck's useful life is almost done, you still have one that still has 3 years of service left in it or whatever.
So was this discussion had with the selectmen, by the way? With this
No.
They
cost
didn't ask as many
benefit?
questions
Yeah.
as you.
You have to go
Not
back.
as in-depth.
They
In-depth.
they weren't.
No, not as in-depth.
They-
Not as in-depth.
They wanted to see this report again on their next meeting, which
Yeah.
is February 5th.
11th.
Okay. We're talking, I'm just rounding, $31,000 a year, 4-year lease.
Just one
What,
year.
that's the
First year
first
is
year.
30.
The next 3 years will only be 24.
24.
Because remember, the first year is $6,000 equipment
24
that they
plus
would need.
6.
That was
Okay, so
added to it.
total over 4 years, including interest. I'm sorry?
103 is what I calculated, I might be off. What is it, Jackie?
Okay.
About 102, I got.
That's okay.
Yeah,
Am I right with
102,
103?
yeah.
Come on.
You're right,
That's
you're
fine.
right,
Yeah.
you're right.
What, Jackie?
Alex,
And you're, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead,
Do
Jackie.
you want to finish? You
You
were,
haven't finished, have you?
Yeah.
Mike?
No, sorry. But you're estimating, over and above what you get today, 40 calls a year, $1,000 a pop, it's 40,000. Even at the 90 percentile level, it's probably around 44, something like that. So you're advocating that you'd make over 4 years anywhere between, what, 16 to 20 $1,000 profit more. I'm just using rough math in my head. I'm doing a cost
Over and
benefit.
above the cost.
Yes,
Yeah.
for
Right.
80,000, they'd pull in.
Yep.
Yeah.
so I think it would be really helpful to see the analysis that you guys have done
Yeah.
over the, I mean, it's still, I shouldn't call it a pilot, it's not a pilot program. It was a pilot program, it transitioned to a permanent program. And so there's growing data every day, unfortunately, because of the need. And I guess we need to learn from that data how steady, I was asking about the collection rate. I know there's lags, so that kind of sets us back a little bit with respect to what we receive and when. It's good to hear it's a solid collection rate. But we need to know how, even if that data supports it, we have to discount it somewhat because of the predictability, the value, the validity of that data, given that it's a short time period, where you'd be looking at it over many years. And then my only other question is, I was surprised that, and it's not like I watched every second of all the BOS meetings that you had when gearing up for the pilot, but was the second ambulance discussed during any of the pilot phase, the need for it?
I don't
Or
think it
kind of
was.
understanding.
Pilot.
It wasn't through the pilot, no.
Not through the pilot, but just in general, like we didn't talk about it last year when it was pretty clear that
I think
you
it
were
was
gonna
so
be in
new
a position.
that we
permanent.
didn't even know at the end of the pilot program if we were gonna stay with it. So then, as this first year has developed, doing it full-time, we don't have that many numbers to go back on. So, it is kind of a stab in the dark on, I don't know who's gonna get sick. You know what I mean? You don't know that number.
Right.
And I think it was
So-
eye-opening,
Frequency calls.
it was eye-opening for the town to have that piece go out, because
Yes.
that, it may have not been fully thought out about, geez, what if that happens? So it did happen,
First
and,
ambulance.
yeah.
Yeah, and we're getting all this, you know, you arrive at an accident scene, we didn't think of that at the time, you know, hey, we do have 2 patients, 3 patients. You know, what if we did have a second ambulance?
My assumption, and I assume their assumption, was always, we had put in the budget for a new ambulance
At
for
some
this
point.
year, would be that old ambulance would become the backup. That was always
Right.
the intention, which of course that got cut short because
The unfortunate
we had
time.
to replace it ahead of time, but had that not had happened and we were actually getting a new ambulance this year, I fully believe that would have been our second.
Would have been your backup.
Yeah. That's why we earmarked that 100,000.
Right.
Right.
That's-
That's a good point to keep in
Yeah.
front of us.
That was our intention.
So that's why we already earmarked that 100,000.
Yeah. That's what I mean, like, I know you wouldn't, I didn't mean to imply that you would have, or you should have asked for a second ambulance during the pilot. Obviously, it's untested, you didn't know. I mean, I think a year ago, I think we were in a point where it felt really good about it going to permanent. But to have planned for one at some point, in the research of the program itself, and when you formulate, you know, how it all works together.
We had just kind of taken it in, like, we had the placeholder, and again, we already had owned that outright, it was already stocked, and that just would have kind of gone to the back of the building
Mhm.
and kept it in service.
So we have those like 5-year capital plans, and is this in one of those capital plans?
Yes.
Okay. And then this is off topic a little bit, it's about the first ambulance. I remember we had talked about, you had asked if you guys were gonna file an insurance claim to get any kind of,
Yes.
The
did
insurance,
we get any insurance?
the insurance, we still held it out back right now, it's still on hold, we have an offer on the table for them to come and take it for $7,000, and it's done.
How much? 7?
$7,000.
So we
We're
paid
covering
for
their
it, right?
upfitting.
So,
Yeah.
Jackie, did you wanted to add something a minute ago?
Well, I just had a question, because as part of the conversation with mutual aid, we talked about how the ambulance is also a part of mutual aid. Are there any other communities in the area that also run just a BLS-specific ambulance, that potentially have 2 BLS ambulances that could share their data with us in terms of their revenue strategy when it comes to having multiple pieces and how that second piece starts to pay for itself? Because I know, you know, it's good to estimate and be conservative and try to come up with some numbers, but there could be other communities out there in a similar scenario that have data. You know, obviously, to the chief's point, you can't predict when people are going to have emergencies or get sick, but then we could at least see some real numbers from another municipality in a similar scenario.
We can definitely call around and see what people have, and again,
It might be nothing,
most of
but
the other
maybe
cities in
something.
town strategy is what we had already said, that their reserve truck, their second truck is paid for. It's probably a 7, 8-year, 10-year-old truck that, again, paid for, sitting there,
Right.
so.
That would be a desirable position to be in,
Yeah.
to have our old paid-for standby,
Yeah.
right. So if, as a follow-up, if there's any data that you guys could share, it doesn't need to be in any fancy format, but to help support your revenue projections, would definitely be helpful, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think we would need to have that discussion with the BOS, round 2 discussion of this.
Yep.
With
Yep.
Some good data and backup and financial projections on this stuff, so I can say, you know, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the iron rail. You know, the iron rail kind of pays for itself, if you will.
It's a revenue-generating investment.
Revenue generating kind of pays for itself, and, you know, on it goes. And it seems to me that with this particular And it's not a sharing issue either. You know, the question if you could share it with Hamilton, it's the same issue, we're gonna lose the revenue.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they're gonna pick up the revenue.
Yeah.
You know, I suppose if you ever had 3 ambulance needs, obviously, then, you know, someone comes in and helps us.
You wanna get us a third one?
So one thing to consider too is, I think there's probably, I don't know if there's an abundance of them, but I'm willing to bet there are more used ambulances out there than used fire trucks.
We started actually looking again, we've been looking at
This
them right
morning.
along, and we actually had somebody walk in our station today, and we just brought it to Anthony's attention
Yeah.
tonight. So it's something we're gonna look at also.
Okay.
Where
Okay,
we could possibly use the insurance money.
yeah, and get
And-
something
and money from our gift account.
somewhat similar to what we had.
That could last maybe 2-3 years
Well, right.
until.
Yeah.
Who was the
Yeah.
company we bought the first one from, or the most recent one?
It was, the brand new one is Kevin Lyons, but
Lyons.
that was,
He went
he
out of
was,
business?
yes, he's
Yeah.
at the end.
Sure points out that Mr. Lyons gave us a very good.
Yes, he did.
opportunity.
Put him out of
Yes,
business.
he did.
No, he was
That-
great to
that
work with.
$88,000,
$88,000.
the 88,000 that's currently on the table, that's the same
Yeah.
truck, everything that we have in our station that we got for 49.9.
Yeah, I know, that's what I
it's great.
recall over the summer. We had made
It's
that.
good we're able to.
Call.
Unfortunate timing, but good.
Yeah.
Good we're able to do it at least, yeah. Okay. Yeah, Carrie, to your point, we would talk, I mean, we're gonna be going down the list of BOS, not spending half an hour on each of these, because we don't have a full day, but some time will be spent on each and more than others. Temperature check in general, if you guys wanna share any thoughts, I mean, I just think that in light of the really difficult fiscal situation, the deficit that we're faced with, to me, between the two biggies, the pumper truck seems less discretionary than the ambulance. I will note that even though one responds to the emergency as it's happening and saves lives that way, so too does the ambulance. So they're both, you know, critical public safety pieces of equipment, right, capital for the town to have, and I think bolstering the ambulance fleet longer term makes sense. I don't know if it does this year. To me, it feels like the pumper truck is less discretionary perhaps, given mutual aid and the like. I don't know if anyone else wants to give their thoughts where they're at. We're not going to vote, I'm just
No, no,
kind of where my thoughts are at now.
I would agree on the pumper truck. I would really, what would really convince me or would support the ambulance is the data. If the town can say to ourselves, we're gonna make 40, and it's costing us 24, and we got another good backup that's gonna last 10 years, or whatever the time frame is.
Or more,
then-
yeah.
Then, that seems, to me, that makes sense. And we'd be putting less mileage and equipment use on the two vehicles. Now, the only other
While paying
argument to
for
that. Huh?
While paying for two.
Well, yeah, but again, for the second one, if we're gonna meet the cost or exceed the
Sure.
revenue,
Like you said, if data can help support that.
I'd argue against myself would be if you could pick up a second, a pre-owned one, and keep it out back like we were planning to use for the one that got damaged.
Yeah.
Then we should absolutely look at that alternative.
Well, if we can get that alternative, we won't have to have that other conversation.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Right. And you mentioned gift account?
yes,
Yeah.
that's what we purchased the
That's
first
right,
ambulance.
that's right,
So the first ambulance cost the town $0.
right, exactly. It was about 7,000,
Yes.
Truck was 7,000, yes.
and then to outfit it, a little
And
extra.
the fire company actually supported it hugely, somewhere in
Yeah.
the $20,000 range for equipment.
Awesome. Wow, it's impressive, yeah. Any other comments, thoughts, questions?
No, I echo
Mm,
Jim.
Good comments.
Okay. Okay, so then, prior to our meeting with BOS, sometime between now and then, we'll maybe get some follow-up. You know, like I said, any format that you want to provide it in. I think what's key too is understanding primary call revenue versus secondary.
Yep.
And how you arrive at that, that's what, I guess, what I would look to. to better understand, get a handle on those numbers.
Very good.
That's capital, anyway. Are there-
Oh, there's more.
A lot of questions.
Oh, forgot. There's more.
It's not that easy, like,
Do we have questions about
There's
personnel or anything?
personnel.
page,
That's what I was going to next, Jim.
what number's the fire?
One of the goals is to enroll 4 new firefighters. Is that,
Academy,
They're in the academy now.
they're in the academy now?
yeah,
Okay.
plus 4 for next year's
Yes.
budget.
Try for 4, yes.
How many are in the academy now?
4.
4, okay.
Can you comment on what you do for fire suppression?
As far as what point of it?
Where?
It just says maintain a great fire suppression program. So-
An engine comes back into fire suppression. Fire suppression is, maintaining property, life. So the engines, ladder truck, all that is.
Oh, maybe I was thinking it was more like fire, like preventing fires from happening in the first place.
Fire prevention is ongoing every day, working with builders, things like that, going out when
So
there's
suppression is different than what
remodels.
I'm thinking.
No, what are you reading off of the,
So FY '21 goals and initiatives, maintain, it's the second to last bullet, maintain a great fire suppression program.
Keep training,
I was thinking of suppression being prevention, but it sounds like
suppression is putting it out.
it's different.
Yeah. Putting it out, training,
Right.
be ready
Okay.
to go, making sure the equipment's ready to go.
Thank you, got it.
Jeffrey, this is what they're looking at as your narrative.
Are we competitive with our on-call rates?
Yes.
What would you attribute the bulk of the salary increase to? I'm looking, so we've got this breakdown here, right? Would be found on,
Probably the only increase is contractual, and there's merit and, cost of living,
okay, merit and COLA,
yes.
okay. Oh, the stipend is ongoing. I was looking at that hasn't changed, right?
For
Call captain stipend?
the.
That's not net new.
Minutely, yes,
Okay,
but it was within our budgetary constraints already. It
Got
was
it.
budget neutral.
I'm sorry, what's the stipend? I missed something. You get a salary plus, what's the stipend? How's that different from, am I reading that wrong? And COLA and all that. Okay. So you get a salary, you get merit pay, at least the top 3, COLA, and what's the stipend for?
Oh, Mike, are you looking at the top 3 are the full-time staff, which includes some of the command staff, but then the stipends towards the bottom are the command staff who are call firefighters, but also command staff. So while we have a call captain, we also have command staffers who are, while we have a captain who's one of our full-time firefighters, majority of the command staff are call
Call
firefighters
firefighters.
as well, so they get an additional stipend because they rotate on, as the officer on duty.
Okay,
So that's that bottom
Lieutenants.
section.
okay.
If you're looking at the EMT stipend, Mike, that's based on a percentage of the calls they come to. That would be our maximum amount of
Ah.
pay that we could be liable for.
Okay.
got it.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
So we budget for 18, could be less, you're saying?
yes.
What's the
Sorry, Jim.
difference between, we got an increase of 3650 in the self-contained, if I'm reading hopefully, breathing apparatus. What's the difference between that and the PAC breathing apparatus? Is it is it the same? Is it?
Which one are you
Testing and
looking at, Gene?
certification.
Next page.
I'm looking under expenses. There's not a number against it.
Yeah, we
It's,
start,
It's self-contained breathing, it went from 6,000 to 9,650.
yeah.
The hydrostat.
This year, we will be hydro testing half of our bottles also, which Anthony had spoke of earlier. So that's
This
a
is that-
5-year.
This is that 5
Every
years.
5 years.
Every
Oh,
5
okay.
years, the bottles that go on the packs have to be hydro tested to make sure they're safe, they're not
So
gonna
that,
explode.
that 3,000
That will be,
variance 30 is
that'll
where the
just be
testing?
for 2
Right.
years, yes.
That's just the testing, not the hardware itself?
Exactly.
How many, what's our call firefighter count now?
About 25.
That's up, right?
Yeah, it's up a little bit. We try to keep a roster of 30, but
Right.
again, we're ongoing recruitment. We'll be starting another intern program and see what we get out of that.
Mm-hmm.
The intern program doesn't cost the town anything.
Right.
It's where they're put into our system for 90 days, see if they come to the call, see if they like getting up at 2 AM and coming down and seeing us.
Right,
Gives us a chance if we don't like them, if they don't like us.
right, exactly.
It's a good trial period.
They have an opportunity to then go to the
Yes.
academy, right? And we pick that up, which is a great way to get them
Yes.
involved and feel out if there's a good fit.
Yeah.
Some risk of going to another city, right, once you get licensed and all that.
We're always
But you
gonna be a
al- we
stepping
always
stone.
have that.
Yeah.
Right.
More than half of our roster has come through the intern program.
Yeah.
Great.
At this point.
It's only a few years you've been doing it, right?
Yeah.
Close to 5.
Close to 5, yeah.
Right.
No, it's a few years.
Yeah, yeah. And so that speaks to the turnover, because it's difficult
Yeah.
on both sides.
Yes.
And then, we had, I recall 30 would be kind of the ideal target, but we were down quite a bit lower than 25. We were high teens, 20-ish, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A few years ago. Again, that was the internship, okay.
I have a question about the flow of funds. So when you make revenue from an ambulance service, where does that go? Does it go to the
General
general
fund.
Fund, yeah.
It does?
Yes.
Okay. And then I just have, on this page, that has the yellow on the top, it's the indicators, performance and workload indicators.
Yeah.
Fire alarms and medical emergencies. Though, and then, like the fire alarms are high, like
What's
FY
that, Gordon
2019.
College? Is that the 2,300 fire?
No, it's just this performance workload indicators, and it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
annual.
19.
So, like, FY 2019 was 418 fire alarms.
Yeah.
And then if you go down to multiple alarm fires, it was 4. So what are the fire alarms? Are they just alarms going off and no fire?
Fire alarms are in residence, Gordon College, town buildings, anything.
So the
Well-being checks.
418 fire alarms, you responded to 4?
It could also be CO calls, carbon monoxide calls, but they are an alarm-generated call.
Are you looking at the multiple alarm fires?
Yeah, just there's so many
With 4.
responses to fire alarms
Yeah.
and so few fires, which is
Thankfully,
good.
yeah.
We'd rather have less fires.
Yes.
But I'm just surprised at how many alarms are going off with no fire.
You can also have fire without being at multiple alarms as
Yeah.
well.
You could have stove fires,
Stove fire,
microwave
kitchen
fires
fire,
that don't trigger
dryer fire.
the threshold to actually be considered
So,
a full
but like that
working
wouldn't be
fire.
under lost fires, which is 3, under 100,000? It's still a few fires, which is
Yeah.
good, that's
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
I was just wanted to clarify, because that seemed like a big number compared to the actual fires. But am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, our number, again, we actually just did the pie chart, but we're at 50% medicals and over 50% fire calls. It's historically been that way. It hasn't changed much as far as the split.
So 50/50?
Yes.
The overtime line,
Overtime line is for the captain. He's the only one that gets overtime at this point. We're hoping to work towards a contract or something for him, and that could go away.
So the call firefighters they don't get over, they just, if they're on 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, they get paid their hourly rate.
A call firefighter comes in during the day, he starts at a 1 hour minimum at 10 to 7 AM at a 3 hour minimum per firefighter.
And what did you say about the overtime? Who's that apply to? Is it-
Applies
The
to
captain.
the captain. It's for him to come back to medical calls and any other calls after hours.
The call captain?
The call captain
He's
is a
also a
full-time
full-time.
firefighter.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Again, that's something that hopefully will be addressed through a contract, so it doesn't look as bad like two people.
Yes.
Is that this year? Is the contract renewed?
For
Re-up
him,
for-
that position doesn't have one at this point, because he's just
Gotcha.
coming from the firefighter. Historically, there hasn't been a contract for just the single firefighter, the daytime position.
Gotcha. We would look for it to have one.
Yes.
Just glancing ahead to the FY '22 real quickly, so there's two capital items. Just want to make sure those are, so that's 85,000 administrative for next year. You're thinking administrative vehicle?
Yeah,
What is that? That's a,
The chief's car and the fire prevention pickup.
that's, two vehicles.
Yes.
And then Jaws of Life scheduled for replacement
Yes.
at 45,000.
Yeah.
Is that, what do we have now? Obviously, we have,
Everything gas-powered and antiquated. The company of all the Jaws that we have has gone out of business probably 2 years ago. So it's extremely
Interesting.
hard to get any type of parts or anything like that.
right,
But what we have still, it works today, knock on wood.
yeah,
So,
and the new is electric hydraulic.
yeah, it would actually all be battery powered.
Battery,
It's all
yeah,
cutting
yeah.
edge now,
Yeah. Literally,
yeah.
sorry.
No pun intended.
Yeah, I was just curious about those.
Can I
Just
ask
looking
you?
ahead.
Thanks, Alex, you made you think of something. The administrative vehicle is a new one? 85 grand?
That's two vehicles, Mike.
Oh, sorry.
And I'm jumping ahead to
No,
22,
no, no.
and I know you know that.
The fire prevention pickup also doubles as a department utility, hauling hose back, things like that. It plows around the fire station. At emergency calls, we plow into the driveway so we can help the people right away.
But you're looking to buy two new ones, or are we leasing?
Chief's car, and will be the chief's car again, and
Utility truck.
the utility
Pickup.
truck, and it would be two on a lease. If it performed like last time, it'd probably be somewhere around $16,000 a year for 5 years on a Ford lease.
One I lost. So, two administrative vehicles, 85 grand.
The 85 is fully loaded, Mike. So what
Yeah.
Jeff's talking about is a potential lease.
Oh, so you hadn't
85 is-
broke it out
Yeah,
into,
the 85 is fully loaded for both.
piece?
Yeah,
piece,
yeah, they're
okay.
both, that threw me off too, they're both in there. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And again, just taking one look ahead, see what stuck out in that column. I don't have any other questions for the fire department, but if anyone else does,
I'm good, sir.
now's the time, no? All right,
Thank you.
thank you all
Thank
for
you.
being here, thanks for everything you do.
Our
Feel
growing-
free. Door's always open.
Yeah, okay,
Got any questions?
great. All
Want
right.
to see any of the equipment? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good to come by, check it out, yeah.
So I don't need any fire alarms.
Those numbers and stuff,
My
you can
house,
pass
right?
on to me, I can distribute them to all
Yeah.
them.
We'll work on those.
Not gonna put smokes in.
He's just ignoring the comment.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, school budget discussion. So we've got our, just generally as it relates to schools, we've got our joint meeting with them next Wednesday? Wednesday, okay.
What is 7 o'clock?
7 o'clock.
Euchre?
It's 7 o'clock.
29th.
Euchre?
I have 7 in my calendar.
That will be a Bucher, yes.
Hasn't
My
made it to
calendar's
mine yet.
cracked.
Okay, I think that's maybe joint FinCom's BOS invited,
In
is that right?
Hamilton, yes.
So we may not have BOS quorum, but if they do, they'll call to order too, and, okay.
Who hosts that? Whose meeting is that? Is that the school committee's meeting? Is that, I can't remember from last year.
That's a joint, I mean,
Or is it a joint?
given that it's their location, and I mean, it centers around their budget, I think there's always kind of the,
They're the host.
yeah, they're the host, yeah.
They sent
But
out the
it's-
invite,
Right,
so.
right.
And so, I know they had a workshop last night.
Yeah.
I didn't attend it, I wasn't able to. Did anyone attend it? Where are we with some of their discussions? Just generally, not
Yeah.
not kind of in any detail.
So Stacy Metternich as liaison to
Yep.
FinCom, and to, you know, the town, to boards and committees, has been very good about keeping us, I think, in the loop as to what they're doing and when, and the high-level stuff, and as well as the detailed budget. So I started going through some, I needed to go through in more detail, and I still do. But she's been keeping us, you know, up to speed on where they're at, and of course, they had the 2 evening workshop a couple of weeks ago, and then their capital subcommittee planning and stuff like that, so I think, Anthony, you met with, Chris, were you in that as well?
Yes.
So Chris and Anthony both met with the superintendent, and I assume the finance, Vinny as well? I don't know
Vinny
his
was there,
title.
yeah. Vinny and
Finance
Joe.
director, whatever.
Joe from Hamilton, yeah.
And Joe, that's right, and you guys met a couple days ago, or a few days ago.
It was
It was
last week.
the day before the selectmen's.
Yeah, so we,
Was that
Or
last
the
week?
day of.
was it, that was last week.
Yeah. The
So you
Tuesday-
haven't
yeah, it was-
talked
It was
since
before
then?
the selectmen.
To the school,
No, I
to the
talked to the
superintendent.
superintendent today, actually,
Oh,
to
okay.
just, you know, keep that line of communication over. We're constantly touching base on any potential new developments, but, you know, right now, it's at what the documents that you've seen, it's at 12.5%. You know, she explained that, the start of the year this year with the $600,000 deficit, you know, that gets added right in. You know, special ed is obviously a big factor. So, and I know that if you looked at the documents real closely, and I spoke with Alex, we spoke a little bit about this last night, it's real heavy on capital. So it looks like they're maintenance-wise. So my discussion today with her was centered around that. And it would be nice to know that since that budget's increasing by $600,000, what is the plan? So the communities know what
The
they're,
maintenance budget?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's nice to know, that's a lot of money, so,
Yeah, it's like 300% increase?
yeah, it was,
With-
yeah.
With utilities?
With utilities, right, exactly. And then, you know, I question on some of the utility charges. I think that,
Why are those going up? Is capital rolled into some of that? Why is it such a high increase under
On-
utilities? Is it because of
that was one of the
capital?
questions that we asked too, so, I think with Tom Gary, who's new, when he looked at the budgets, he looked at the past 3 or 4 years, picked the highest year, and then increased it by like 2%. So I questioned and said, but
Oh, yeah, we
there was
talked
a
about that.
significant amount of green communities monies with, you know, to make those more energy efficient, so I would expect them to go down. So what are our actuals compared to the budget? So I asked them to take a closer look at that. So that was, like I said, that was our discussion today. I just think that with the maintenance increase like that type of percentage, that I think that it'd be important to hear more.
So just generally, though, I mean, it's, you know, kind of broad picture, it looks like they're still at the 12.48%. And that, there doesn't seem, at this point, to be any significant reductions on the in discussion. Is that
Well,
accurate to say?
I think there still could be discussions to be had. You know, like Julie said to me today, it's, you know, it's still a preliminary budget, and she's looking for, you know, school committee to weigh in. They may give a different direction and put certain parameters on her, and so I think further discussions are still being had over there.
Good, okay.
To what extent that can be lowered, I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I wish I had more information. We all do.
Well, sure, yeah, and I mean, I guess we will have an opportunity, obviously, next week to ask questions, and,
Right.
and we can, you know, by the way, Stacy, and I'll let David know too, but she had said in her email, you know, send along questions, so we don't have to, but if we want to
Oh, okay.
give them.
Did you see the
heads up.
proposed agenda? Did we send that to you?
I don't recall.
I know we send a lot of stuff, so anyways, what they're looking to do, Alex, is, for the town of Wenham to go through their operating budget, talk about what issues that we're having, then go through our capital budget, discuss those issues. Then they wanted Hamilton to do the same, and then they would do the same. So
Okay.
I don't think they just wanted it all about the schools. They wanted to hear what was going on.
Historically, and I'm sure you saw this, you know, Peter had done a quick update on the town side. Hamilton had done the same. You know, we can chime in as needed, and then the schools, I mean, it's predominantly about, you know, we're not gonna spend as much time talking about the fire equipment in next week's school meeting as we did
No.
tonight. That would make little to no sense. But yeah, you're right.
No,
I mean,
we-
obviously, we update them on where we're at, for sure.
Right, and we go back to basically the presentation that was made to the Board of Selectmen after we received all the department submissions, because we're still working
Right.
off of that
That's
right
right.
now.
Yeah, so we'll have
So-
some placeholders.
Right, we're still looking, that was a
Yeah.
$1.1
Yeah.
million structural deficit, and a deficit right now, and, you know, still needing to work through stuff, and then the capital plan, so.
Right.
You know, we certainly will share all that information again with them all.
Right.
But, yeah, without getting into the weeds on how we're still trying to reduce our costs.
That's right.
And what about, I haven't watched the Board of Select meetings. What about discussion on structure of articles in case that comes up? Or is that to be deferred later when we have more concrete numbers? 'Cause that has been asked in the past.
For the budget-wise, for those, we haven't gotten to that point yet. So,
That'll be our response.
yeah, we just don't know. We don't know what we're gonna be looking at, and what, you know, I think what our final budget is gonna be dependent upon what type of number that we end up with the schools, because we very well may have to go back to what the town's been doing, and just throwing all free cash and deferring a lot of the capital stuff. Well, we don't know yet, so it's tough to say what that ultimate article. I think that the Board of Selectmen has indicated that initially when they heard it, that there was a article that was inclusive with an override, and this is before we even knew the school number, and the second article would be, if that failed, that they were considering implementing fees, increased fees like trash fees, and that would be, so there'd be two budgets. If the override fails, then we have to do trash fees is to maintain the level of service.
And I think one issue that's come up is, you know, we've separated out the Wenham override from the school override in prior years, which.
We haven't. We had a level service budget and one override that included the remainder of the schools. Or, and then subsequently, we might.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so
Right,
we
there was no
didn't-
there was no
Yeah,
town
no town
override.
override.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But the way we had structured it, I guess, there was a perception that it had prioritized the town budget, and that we didn't include, do you know what I'm referring to? This whole discussion, it's why.
Well,
Are you talking
so
about the OPEB
They're two different
versus
overrides.
resource officer where we had two school?
No,
Yeah.
no, it's different. I'm not articulating it clearly, and I'd have to look at the articles to remember it.
You want-
It's the way we structured the articles, and that there was no, that Wenham was all rolled into one.
The town side, for the last few times at Wenham has had an override, all of the town budget has been rolled into the levy limit budget. So it was only the
Yes.
schools
And
that were
that
in the
was the issue.
potential operating overrides at that time.
And a separate article.
Correct,
Separate
yes.
article, yeah.
It's Article 3 or 4.
Yeah, one being the levy limit
right.
budget, 2
Right.
being the use of free cash, and 3 or
Yep.
4 dependent being
Right.
operating
And
overrides
that's
with
always
ballot
been how we
questions.
have,
Historically.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
what-
it was,
Whatever budget we put forth obviously needs to include their fully funded town and school side,
Yep.
right? As to the exact structure, I think that will depend in part potentially on
Right.
the total numbers that we come in at. So I think we
So if
Probably
this
don't know how to
town needs
play
an
it.
override, which right now we think that that's the case, you know, is it one override that's gonna be presented? Those decisions I don't think have been made by
Right.
the BOS and yourselves.
Right, and to your point, BOS has historically decided that. I
Right.
think we want to be close with them
Right,
when we're
so-
talking through to make sure we're on the same page, so we all are in support of it,
Mhm.
but, yeah.
I'm having a brain.
No,
Look deep in thought,
go
Jim.
ahead. Right ahead.
But that's,
Go ahead.
and I actually apologize, I do have to wrap myself personally in about 5, because I gotta pick up a
Just one quick,
middle school.
so,
But that doesn't mean the meeting doesn't need to end. I
no,
can-
no, I won't dispute. So, now I've even almost forgotten my question. So if the town override will include, if we have a town override, does not include the override for the schools if we have to go to a school.
I think it's premature, I don't think
Yeah.
we can have this discussion right now.
No,
Yeah,
We
no.
simply can't.
and
No.
so it's premature to have it,
Okay.
I don't mean to,
but
Yeah.
I
Be
just
too
brought
blunt,
it
sorry.
up because
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not remembering the specifics, but it was a point of contention, where the
There's-
school committee asked if the way we structured our articles, and I'm not articulating the details well, but the way in which we structured our articles represented a higher priority for the town than it did for the school, for what and it was,
Because it was separated out?
yeah, it was brought up last year. We fielded questions in meetings several
Different
times
discussion.
and at annual town meeting. And so I just am throwing it out there for us to think about a little bit in case it's asked and what our response
So we'll
is
be
gonna
asked again, and you can get up there and state that we don't know what our warrant, the school committee will always want to know what the warrant's article structure strategy is, to the extent we have one, which we don't have one formed at this point. I can state that only what we know, what we've done in the past with that structure of a level services and then the override for the past 2 years, in stating that it was going to be that same structure last year as it was the prior year, in FY '20 as it was in FY '19, I was just berated. So you can, if you'd like, say that same thing, but, you
Well,
know,
to both your points, I think that's the last agenda item up for Wednesday is, how do we get everybody's budget passed?
right.
We simply,
Well, the school committee budget failed on the floor of town meeting last year. FY '20 budget failed on the town meeting floor. It's, that just is what it is. And they came back with a lower number reduced OPEB, and then it passed. So, I'm not saying that's our goal, but ideally, we'd like to be in support of the budget. My personal viewpoint is, you've got a high bar from the standpoint of, a dollar increase from FY '19 to '20 of about $1.6 million to a $4.3 million increase, to not take a hack at it. So I haven't seen, and I still need to spend more time reading through and taking some notes and also watching some more of the videos. I think you'd be hard pressed to argue that you're keeping the schools in a real long-term viable solution by not being alarmed by that, recognizing the severity of that increase and the impact to both towns. So we want to support it, but we just want to make sure that, and this is what I wrote in my note back to Stacy the other evening, which is, I personally am most interested in where have they looked to cut, what have they not sought to fund, because we'll be able to come out of our budget, cycle saying the exact, with responses to these questions. And this evening could well be one of those instances where that's deliberation as to what we include and what we don't. So I would just expect the same from the school committee who's charged with giving the direction and guidance to the superintendent as she's requested. And hopefully we have that next week.
like to make a motion to adjourn.
Well, I'll second it then, Mike.
There was no second, so there may be some more discussions.
Oh, I'll second, that's fine.
I have to, I have an obligation, I'm sorry, but I didn't mean to cut the meeting short. I have to run, but that doesn't
I
mean
think
it
2
others do.
hours is.
Ample.
Yeah.
We've beaten it to
All in
death
favor?
so far.
Yeah.
All in favor, adjourn?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.